everyone, I'm Kevin with Victory 4x4. In this video, we're going to be installing our strike rear bumper on this 4th gen Toyota Tacoma. So we'll jump right into things underneath the truck here by disconnecting a couple electrical connections. The first one is going to be this main harness connection here. You do have a small thumb tab that you press in out on the front, which then allows you to pull this lever up and over and then pull back on this connector to get it unplugged. With this removed, you can now get a better look at that tab. That just kind of locks in the lever, and those get removed pretty easily. Just make sure to leave that kind of locked all the way open, and then as it goes back on, it's sort of a cammed mechanism, so you'll need to rotate it to actually pull the connector back in when reinstalling those. Now, to give you just a little more context, that was kind of here in the driver's side rear corner of the truck. You can then come over and remove this electrical connector, which is just your trailer plug. That just has one small tab on the top, which you can press to release and then pull this straight back. Now, as you follow your bumper around, you've got a bumper brace that ties into the outside of each frame rail. To get that removed, you just need a 12mm socket, and there is one of these on each side of your vehicle. Now, back up top, you've got 4 plastic covers that need to be removed to expose the mounting hardware for this bumper. So one of these out on each corner. I'm just using a plastic pry tool here, but we're also just throwing this bumper in the trash at the end of this, so use whatever you want to get these removed. You just have to get under one end and start prying up, which should release the clips to pull this out. Admittedly, these back ones can be a little tricky to get to, and you may break them as you pull these covers out. In the center down here, there's actually 3 of these kind of textured tread type sections. The outside 2 are the only 2 that are actually removable covers, and you'll pop these off kind of in the same fashion. With those out of the way, you need a 12mm socket, and you're going to have 2 nuts on the center section of the bumper to remove and 3 bolts out on each end. From here, you're kind of just lifting up and back to get this removed. You're kind of lifting up off of the 2 studs here in the center, and then up off of some welded standoffs out here. You may have some wires in there to contend with, so take your time with this and carefully get it freed up. Once it's free, it should be pretty easy to tell, and then you can kind of just lift the entire thing up and back, and we'll put this over on a cart to do some more disassembly. So there's a couple things we want to do with this out on our cart. First and easiest thing to do is going to be to remove the trailer plug. It just has 2 metal tabs that you kind of press in on here, and that allows you to pull it through the outside of the opening, and then you'll just hang on to this to install toward the end of your bumper installation. From there, we're going to work to disconnect the harness from the bumper. So it's just got a series of plastic clips holding it on, and there's a couple different ways you can take them off. You can, as long as you can access the back side of them, typically pinch in on them, which will allow you to press them down through their openings and free them up. You're not going to be reusing those in any of the bumpers, so if you want to take the time to really clean up this harness, you can actually come through and very carefully cut all of these off, as long as you're making sure not to damage the harness or the wire loom there itself. Now, as you come in closer here, you'll see your backup or proximity sensors that need to be removed. With one hand on the outside of the bumper, kind of pressing gently in on this, you can then pull out on each of the orange tabs here, and that should pop free from its retainer in the bumper there. Now, out on each end, you're going to have to remove the painted end cap so that you can access the rest of your harness and remaining sensors. You can see a couple more clips here. You can pop these now or after you get the cover removed. Either way is fine there. And then all of the black clips kind of around the perimeter here. You've got 3 on the bottom and 3 along the inside. Those, you'll need some sort of pry tool to just carefully pop the center out, and then get under the clip and pull the entire thing kind of out of its hole there. From there, you just have a series of 5 or 6 of these push-through clips that you need to work free. So they all have a small locking tab on there that you'll need to press in on with something. A flat screwdriver would work fine, and then press out at the same time to kind of free that up from its slotted location in here. So those are going to pretty consistently want to kind of fight you as they're trying to pop back into each of those slots. So just carefully work at those. And once you get them removed, this whole end cap should slide out from under here. And you then need to pay close attention because you've still got a sensor connected out on this corner that needs to be removed before you can completely get this out of the way. This one pops out just like before. So one hand on the outside and then 2 tabs in here. Then this cover can be set off to the side. From there, the last thing in this location is your blind spot monitor. It's just 3 nuts that need to be removed from their studs there with a 10mm socket. And with those removed, you can easily lift that off of its studs, and then just be sure to take care of these throughout this process and make sure you're not banging them or damaging them on anything. With both sensors unbolted, these two should now be separated. The only thing you want to pay close attention to at this point is where your main harness connection is, so kind of what end is driver and passenger, so that it can be reinstalled in the same orientation. So this is our 3-piece rear bumper for the 4th generation Tacoma that sits here behind me. We're going to go ahead and just dive right into it and get started getting this thing assembled and bolted on. We'll start by grabbing our outside wings and getting the lights installed there. So here is the outer corner of the bumper. A couple things to point out on this. We've got mounting provisions for blind spot monitors out here. Obviously our adventure carrier mounting location here. You've got parking and proximity sensor mounting holes, as well as heavy duty D-ring shackles, and moving over here, a pod light hole. The pod lights we designed this around are going to be the Baja Designs S2s, or equivalently sized light, so check out their website for dimensions on those if you're looking to go with a different brand. On the inside of the bumper here, you can see we provide you a nice slotted mounting tab to get your light bolted in place. Keep in mind that a lot of these light tabs are essentially reversible, so you may need to adjust that depending on the lights you're using. And then Baja provides us some nice stainless hardware here, so we can just get this down in the tab. Get the nut started here on the bottom, and I'll grab a couple 9/16 wrenches to line this up with the cutout in the bumper and tighten things up. You'll then need to assemble and install the blind spot monitor and its bracket so it can be bolted into this outside wing. So you'll need to find the bracket itself as well as the appropriate side sensor, which will kind of nest down inside of the bracket here and line up with the 3 outside mounting holes. Again, these are side specific, so pay close attention to that. Make sure you are putting them on the correct side of the vehicle. And then with them in place, you'll find black 1/4-20 button head hardware to install into each of these holes. These are going to be the 3/4 long black button heads with serrated nuts on the back side. With all 3 of those bolts in, you want to tighten them at this time using a 5/32 hex. By hand, don't overdo it. Then the sensor and bracket assembly can be bolted into this bumper wing now with the cover plate in place as well. Pay attention to these because there is one side that's going to appear a little nicer or cleaner than the other just due to the cutting process of those. You'll kind of sandwich that over top of the sensor and then install it in this location using more of those 3/4 long 1/4-20 button heads now with washers on them, and again the same nuts on the back side. And again, once you get all 4 of those in, grab your 5/32 hex to tighten them up. At that point, if you haven't done so already, you can repeat this process to the other side wing, and then this is ready to install on the truck. Now, as you start to slide this outer wing up on the truck, you're going to be using the top holes up here, those factory threaded holes, just as a guide to get it lined up. And then you're going to want to have a 1-inch long 1/2-inch bolt from your bolt pack handy with a washer and a serrated flange nut. That is going to pass through this lower toe point down here, through our bumper bracket, and then you'll install the nut on this side. So holding my light wire in toward the center of the truck should keep it out of the way here. Then we just want to pay close attention to the tail light and the bed out on the right hand side to make sure that we're not damaging anything there. And then kind of starting the top, you should be able to sort of rotate this down in, and then you may have to kind of walk it in, since we do want it to be somewhat of a snug fit on the mounting brackets and the cross member underneath. So once you get that in here and the upper holes are lined up, again, you can take that bolt and slide it in from the bottom. And then we're just going to tighten this by hand for now, so that we know we have something kind of safe and secure supporting this outer wing and preventing it from coming off of the truck in any way. And then we can repeat this process over on the driver's side. With both of your outer wings on, you can grab your center section. This, you're going to have to kind of carefully slide in here, basically until you hit those 2 threaded studs in the center that are there from the factory. You can then lift up ever so slightly and allow that to slide down on top of those, pushing it in the rest of the way. You'll then just need to find your factory hardware or have it handy before you get started here, and the nuts will go back in the middle, as well as the bolts threading back in out here on the outside. Now, if you remember correctly from the disassembly, you're only going to have 3 of those factory bolts per side up here, because that's all the factory used, but there are mounting provisions for 4, so we chose to use that. We give you an M8 flanged hex head bolt to go in that location, and we provide you a washer that we would like you to put on there as well. That'll just protect the powder coat in this location as you're tightening things up. So leaving all of that hardware loose, you can then install your 3/8 black button heads in the 6 holes down along the back edge of the bumper here. These, you may need a alignment tool to just kind of gently pull this into position so that these can slide through. And then you will have to reach in underneath to get the nuts installed. Once you have all 6 of those started, you'll grab a 7/32 hex. You can then tighten up these button heads first to sort of square up our entire bumper assembly here, and then we'll work on tightening up our factory mounting hardware throughout here. So for that, you'll need your 12mm socket for the 2 in here, as well as the 3 factory bolts out there, and then you may need to switch to a 13 to get that last bolt that we provide. For that, you will need a 12mm socket to get the 2 nuts in here, as well as the 3 factory bolts out on the ends, and then you may need to switch to a 13mm to get that last bolt that we provide. Now moving underneath the truck, you're going to be looking for this series of plastic hole plugs. You can see there's 3 here. We're going to remove the 2 rear ones on both the inside and outside of this frame rail. For that, I just have a small pry tool here. These usually come out pretty easily. You can then find your rear tie-in brackets and get these installed. So this one is the driver's side. I have it here in the correct orientation with 2 4-inch long 1/2-inch bolts installed with washers. You're going to slide that through the frame, and then on the inside at each location, you're going to use one of these square washers along with a flat washer, followed by a nylock nut on the inside, and then obviously the frame rail will kind of nest in between here. So as you slide this up in, making sure those bolts pass through the frame, you should expect your tie-in bracket to nest on the outside of the bumper bracket in here, and then this lower flange should sit pretty well flush to the bottom of the frame. Then you can get that hardware installed. So here's a look at one from the inside. So we've got that square washer, again a flat washer, and then the nylock nut. We are going to leave these loose for now, but just note that when you go to tighten these up, that there is not a solid sleeve, for example, throughout this frame rail. Even though it's boxed and it's pretty strong, there's a potential that you could crush it if you over tighten these. That's why we use the nylock nuts here. We just want you to draw this in tight and let it be. Out here where the bracket ties to the bumper, there's 3 mounting holes in that vertical face. You will likely want to start at the top and kind of work your way down, since you'll have to feed the nuts in between there and the frame rail. And there is room to do it, but it can be a little bit tight. So if you just work your way down from the top, that works out pretty well. I'm just going to show you the bottom one right here because it's easiest to see at this time. So these are more of the 1-inch long 1/2-inch bolts with washers, and then the serrated flange nuts going on the inside down here. From there, we can start to tighten this up. You'll need a 3/4 wrench, and we can get a 3/4 socket on the inside, at least for those 2 longer bolts. You'll need just the wrench out here on these 3 vertical fasteners. Just make sure as you go to tighten this up that the bottom of your bracket stays pretty well tight to the bottom of the frame. When it comes to tightening these, the flange nut should grab pretty easily on the inside and kind of hold itself so that you can tighten the bolt out here. If you're having any trouble with that, you can grab another 3/4 wrench to fit up in there, or just holding the wrench, or the nut rather, with your fingers. Those should grab again and tighten up pretty easily. From here, you'll be installing 1/2-inch thread cutting hardware. So these are going to be a little bit tapered and have some kind of vertical cuts in the ends of the threads here if you're not used to seeing them. They're also a flanged hex head bolt to help you identify them there. You're going to do this in the 2 hole locations here on the bottom of this tie-in bracket, as well as 1 here on the main bumper bracket, and then 2 in closer to the hitch that we'll go over in a moment. Now, as always, when drilling, you want to start by center punching as close as possible to the center of each hole location. Now, these 1/2-inch bolts do require you to drill up to a 7/16 hole size. However, we don't want to start with that large diameter drill bit. We're going to kind of work with a smaller bit as more of a pilot hole, and then a series of bits to get up to that final hole size. So here I'm starting out with, I believe, a 3/16 bit as somewhat of our pilot hole. And like I said, we'll work our way up until that 7/16 size. Now, I am just kind of walking you through one right now, but that drill and installation process is going to be the same for all of these. You just want to make sure to work essentially from the outside in toward the center as you install and tighten them up. So with that hole drilled here, I've got a 3/4 socket on our large impact. You can then apply pressure up into the frame and run your impact, cutting those threads and installing this bolt. Now, you will notice this front one does get a little tight in here with the exhaust, and if you're having trouble with that, you can just spray a little bit of lubricant, WD-40 for example, on the rubber hanger up here in front of the exhaust tubing, and then pulling back on it. You may need a pry bar for this, but usually on these new ones you can get them to pop pretty easily and be able to help kind of flex this down and out of your way. Now, the 2 in here toward the center, you will have to drill and install the bolt up through this safety chain location on the factory hitch. The only tricky thing there potentially is it may require you to either have a long drill bit or kind of just extend it out toward the end of your drill so that it can reach up into this location. Now, if you find that your socket seems to be an issue here, whether it's an alignment issue, if it's too large, whatever the case may be, a good idea or something that's worked well for us is taking a short socket and putting it on a small extension, and that gives you a little more wiggle room inside of these slots. With all of those installed and tight over here on the driver's side, you'll just repeat that process over on the passenger side. Now, lastly, with your 3/4 socket, you can come back in and tighten those first 1/2-inch bolts we installed through the factory toe points into the bumper here. And then, if you haven't done so already, reconnect that exhaust hanger. We'll now work to reinstall our factory wire harness into your new bumper. So again, pay attention to the orientation of this. We're just going to start by feeding one end out toward the corner and then work our way across in here. We did have to remove the factory blind spot monitors, which is a very common style electrical connection. You just press the center tab and then separate the two. And then we just kind of paid close attention so that we can reinstall the passenger side sensor on the passenger side, and same with the driver's side. So we're just going to take these ends and feed them up over the hitch. They can then fit in behind the bracket that you see here, working our way across. And then continuing through to kind of feed these all the way out to that outside corner. You should be able to fit those in between the kind of standoff bracket that we bolt down to on the top in this location. That'll all kind of help retain that wiring up inside of the bumper here, and then you'll feed it out around the other side of the frame rail so that these can be installed in that outside corner. Once you've got the harness routed through both sides of the bumper, just be sure to reinstall the main harness plug here, kind of pressing in on that and locking the lever back into place. And then we'll come back to the main trailer wire harness over here. Now on this trailer harness, you need to create just a little bit of slack to reach out to the new trailer plug mounting location. For that, you want to unclip this one as well as another clip up top here. Normally this would be secured to the top of this cross member. So we're kind of creating that slack so that we can pull it a little further to the rear of the truck, and then one out here closer to this plug if you haven't disconnected that one already. Out here you can start to install your lights, plugs, and sensors. So starting with our trailer plug, we'll just snap that back in to its wire connection there, and then pass it through the cutout and snap it into place. Then kind of same thing over here with the license plate light. We'll click that back in. It's got a nice cutout here to snap into on the bumper. And then we do provide you 1/4-inch hardware to mount your license plate inside of the tray here on this back face if you're going to be doing it here. If not, and you're relocating it out on your adventure carrier, you should receive hardware with the relocation kit that you purchased for that. You can then reach back in and plug in both of your blind spot monitors, and you should hear an audible click with these. Now all of your parking and proximity sensors are going to install the same way. We provide you a rubber grommet that goes into each of the sensor holes, so you can start that on one end and just kind of walk it around until it's seated in there. Then you'll press the sensor in from the back side, just kind of reaching around the hitch in here. You may have to, again, sort of start one end of that and then walk it into this grommet. If you're wondering how far those press in with it fully installed, it should be kind of flush or just under flush with the outside surface of the grommet itself here. Now all of those sensors installed the same way. You may notice that your outside sensors are typically body colored on these trucks. So if you want to do something with that, a light dusting of black paint shouldn't really affect that sensor and its function. We've also had pretty good luck cutting out some very small black vinyl circles and sticking them on those as well if you're concerned about that. From there, if you are not installing adventure carriers in these outside spindle locations at this time, we do provide you black plastic caps to seal those off both top and bottom, and we recommend installing them with just a little bit of RTV to actually seal those up and prevent any water, dust, dirt, debris, whatever it may be from getting in there over time. If you are installing adventure carriers, you're going to want to go ahead and check out our full adventure carrier installation video for the most in-depth look at how to get those installed here, as well as your latch brackets in toward the center of the bumper. After you have all of the upper mounting hardware tight here in the center as well as out on the sides of the bumper, you'll be installing the tread plates. You have the logo tread plate here in the center. It's going to line up with 4 1/4-inch bolt holes here on the bottom, which you can line up and then install 4 1/4-20 button heads with washers and serrated flange nuts, which you'll have to kind of reach underneath and install. Installing the nuts in these outer holes, both here in the center as well as out on the wings, can get just a little bit tight or tedious, but it is very much doable. One little tip would be to grab a 7/16 wrench and pop the nut in like that, which may help you reach in kind of over that hitch receiver tube and get these lined up. Or you can kind of reach your hand in from somewhat of an angle underneath and access each of these holes. Once you have all of your hardware started, you'll tighten these again with a 5/32 hex. So at this point, your installation is complete. If you guys have any questions about this install or any other products we offer here at Victory 4x4, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always send us an email at info@victory4x4.com or call us at 269-459-8447.